Hey, how you doing? You are not seeing triple today. You are seeing the 3 battery options on the 010X available from RevRides. And I wanted to show you, I'm going to do a little database breakdown of these, maybe to help you decide, because I had a little problem when I was first looking at 010Xs. And of course, there are a bunch of other scooters that share this platform and have these same battery options from Apollo, Varla. There are scooters all over the place that are kind of coming out of these same factories with these same options. And the only thing I'm really going to say about that is I suggest you look at the company backing up the scooter, just for long-term, satisfaction. I'm not really going to say anything about that about the companies. So the 3 options of the 010X are as follows: 52 volts, 18.2 amp hours of generic Sinc cells with mechanical disc brakes. You have 52 volts, 23 amp hours of LG cells with Zoom hydraulic disc brakes. Both of those 2 options have 1000-watt motors for 52 volts. Then the 60 volt version, which is one closest to me, that has 60 volts, 21 amp hours, and that 1200-watt motors, and those are Samsung cells. So there's some differences there. So if you look at the price graph versus watt hours, you can see, when you jump up past the lower model, the price and watt hours doesn't change a whole lot because those batteries are pretty close together in overall capacity. Now, I think the biggest factor people are going to be thinking about when they look at these are probably acceleration and range. Acceleration wise, this was a surprising one to me. The ranking of them, the 60 volt, of course, is the fastest at 4.5-ish seconds. The next fastest was actually the 5218 at 4.6-ish seconds. And then coming up last was actually the 5223 at 4.7 or so seconds. Interesting to me that I'm not exactly sure why the lower one was a little bit faster. Weight overall isn't greatly different. I'll put that on the screen. Is within 2 pounds, so it's basically a pound increment up from each scooter. I thought that was surprising. Both well under the 80 pounds advertised. As far as braking goes, this is really interesting to me. The fastest braking was a 60 volt scooter, followed by the 5218, and the 5223 was the last in braking. I adjusted all these breakers prior to doing this test, and something about the way the brakes were, they just didn't feel quite as good. I don't know why on the middle model. And then the hill climb, I really only got an effective hill climb on the first 2 models. And again, the 5218 was fastest up the hill, 11.4 seconds. It's just ripping up that hill. It's like 14% incline, pretty steep hill. Then the 5223 was half a second slower. Did I say that right? 52. I might say some of these wrong. There'll be some notes on the screen. And the 60 volt on the hill climb is way faster. The problem is there's some people that are walking, and I couldn't keep under power. I had to slow down going up the hill because it was too fast to be comfortable going that fast around people. So probably under 10 seconds, I would imagine, up that hill. So if you really need the hill climbing ability, these all climb quite well. If you're a much bigger person, maybe you need the extra power from the 60 volt. Now, I think everybody's also going to want to think about range. This was odd to me because what I did is I did pretty much the same loop within 0.2 of a mile between the two, all 3 of these scooters. And they all did it with, ironically, 60% battery remaining by voltage, using the voltage. So they each used 40% of their battery. So then, of course, there's a difference in efficiency there. So the 5218 amp hour version was the most efficient at 33 watt hours per mile. Then to the 5223 at 36, and then around 37. So not a great deal of efficiency difference when you bump up to the 60 volt with the 1200 watt motors. Now I did hold the speed at somewhere between around 17 to 20 miles per hour pretty much this whole time, and this trip involved the hill climb. So route was pretty similar, speed I tried to keep it really similar. There's just a small difference between the battery and the motor options. So where does this put me? It puts me in a difficult spot to make a decision still. If it were me, I would really be between the two 52 volt options. For me, the 60 volt version, there's so much torque that it artificially compresses the suspension in sort of a non-pleasing way. Now you can adjust the suspension, as I'll show in another video, to maybe dial that back a little bit, but still you're going to get some of that artifact because the torquey motors and a lot of suspension travel kind of work slightly against each other. So I kind of feel, for me, I'm not a super fast high-speed rider. The 52 volt version felt a little bit better to deal with. And really my deciding factor between the two 52 volt versions is how comfortable do I feel about the generic battery cells. My experience, I've really only seen generic cells and Samsung cells fail. I haven't seen a single failure with the LG or Panasonic cells. Of course, you still get the same warranty, same 1-year warranty on these. So, you know, if you last a year, you're protected the same amount with every option. It's how your comfort feels after that. So, if it were me, I'd be having a hard time deciding between the two 52 volt versions. I kind of like the way the mechanical disc brakes feel better. I'm probably odd that way. I don't necessarily want the super feathery light handbrake feel on a scooter. Yeah, I hope this little bit of information helps you out, kind of make a little decision. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a short ride on both the 5218 and the 60 volt scooter. Just around the block. I'll do a couple bursts of speed, probably the same path, just to show you a little differences. Here we are on the 10X. This is the 52 volt, 18.2 amp hour version of the scooter. And we're going to take off here in first gear, which is really a speed limit, here in eco mode single motor. You can see in eco mode single motor, you do have a pretty gentle scooter. I got speed capping out about 15 here. See on the camera. Now I've noticed there isn't a huge difference between these in eco single motor mode. The speed caps, I am in cruise control, adjusting engage right there. So that was basically to the same speed. And now we are gonna. All right, so that's interesting. So pretty well balanced scooter, so you can almost come to a stop like I did there without losing your balance. So I'm going to go into dual motor eco mode, and you can just see the difference here. But it is really a difference in acceleration. Could you hear that a little bit? And that puts me right up to that. It's pretty much a very similar speed cap. Here I am at 3. And so I'm kind of a little limited. Of course, we're in the stock settings, so you can fidget with these a little bit. But so we're kind of limited there in eco mode, even dual motor mode. So now I'm going to switch to turbo mode, back to single motor, and you can see what the difference is. And I'm just going to quickly toggle through. So we're already getting up to 11, 12. You know, now in 2 we're getting up in that same at a post 20 range. So, and then this is where the fun begins. We're going to go ahead and go dual motor. We're in the same speed limit 3, and just going to show you what the difference is. So one of the things I'm not a super fan about is, of course, in dual motor mode, turbo mode, you got a lot of torque. You can tell I'm trying to be real gradual on the throttle, and it can be a little tough to do because you get in that turbo mode, you got a lot of torque. So my preference is really to ride in eco mode, dual motor. you can still get a little wheel spin like I did right there, and you get, you know, a reasonable speed cap out. Now, I like to ride a little faster than this. I really like to ride at about between 17 to 20, and with the ability to jump up to about 25. I never really ride above 25. The only problem with the way the spacing is on these speed limits on the 52 volt 10X is I can't get to where I want to be in eco mode here. So I got to go into turbo mode, and I don't find the rest of everything quite as... You're right. I don't find the rest of the torque. See there, I'm in level 2 and I can blow right by it, but I don't enjoy personally that torque. So it's just something to know. Just hoping maybe you're picking out a detail from that, not like you're as picky as I am. Hear a little chatter from that front fender. I tightened up the stem pretty good, so I'm not really getting much movement or motion there at all. So I'm gonna just do a pretty decent braking right here. So, I mean, I locked up the brakes there. I didn't even mean to do that. The rear brake, because sometimes there's enough suspension on these that you do sometimes get the rear tire to come up a little bit in hard braking. It takes kind of a lot of practice to kind of avoid that. And I took some weight off of it and skidded that back tire. So we're in eco mode, dual motors. This is where I like the way this scooter feels the best. But what you run into is that same eco mode phenomenon where I get the same speed in all 3 modes, and it's not quite as fast as I would like. So even though it's a little faster than the 52 volt, the brake points don't really help me out. Again, the bulk of the riding for the way I'd ride, I'd have to be in for speed purposes in dual motor mode, turbo mode, which isn't quite as comfortable for me as I would like to be in eco mode. So I'm going to go back to eco and do kind of how I would. So right there, you can still get a little burnout. You still get a good amount of the power. It's just it's more manageable. But again, not having any difference between those speed limits is just kind of a little limiting. So then I'm going to go into turbo mode. Oh, almost got that squirrel. And you can see just at that same point, you know, there's a ton of pull, and you can kind of get an idea how I'm trying to be pretty ginger on the throttle, and it just takes a lot more practice to really get really smooth on this throttle in the 60 volt scooters. Of course, like most things on the Zero line, there's a lot of adjustability in that display, so you can go ahead and you can change some of those definitely. Yeah, so for me, the 60 volt scooter, when I have the suspension like I have on this one set up where I like it, it still works the suspension a little more. So I would have to ride with the suspension tighter than I might like, just to kind of get the motor feel, kind of pogo sticky-ishness out of there. The last thing I gotta say about the 1200 watt motors and the 1000 watt motors, they are just almost dead quiet. They are so quiet, and I've really got to hand it to the motor choice on those. I really enjoy that quiet. It's kind of sleeper speed kind of idea. But once you get used to the suspension on these scooters, you can, and with the headset tension's a little better, you really have some pretty good maneuverability. And I have heard of some steering wobble at high speeds, but I'm not somebody that really rides that way, so it's not something I will be pushing it to experience. Here's another little look at the Zero up here, up closer at the 10X. You have the dual charge ports here. Oh, geez. You got the dual charge ports here. I have made some little custom covers that will soon be available on my website of different colors you'll see on these scooters. The deck on these is 19 inches by 9 inches wide. So for my size 10 feet, you know, you got lots of options here. Side by side is easy to do, even with a gap in between your feet. A lot of options. This little tail plate does really help if you're kind of doing a little more spirited handling. I tend to be a left foot forward person. Kind of doing something like that is really helpful if you're really trying to push this thing on the handling side. Do a little pan here for you across the scooter back to that rear disc with that 1000 watt motor back there. 10-inch by 3-inch tires on all these. So right there in the top and bottom of your screen, those are the wheels of, in the foreground, the 52 23 amp hour, and further away is a 60 volt. You can see the brakes are the same, so it does look the same. You just have the 1200 watt motor there on the 60 volt version. And when you come down across, that's really where the differences stop. The rear fender is a little bit of a weak point on the Zeros. The fenders just have a little bit of a cheapy feel. The lighting is okay, but I'll show in the night clip. It's good for people seeing you. It doesn't do a great job for helping you see anything else. And I'm going to fold the middle one down so you can see how that works. As with all these clamps, it's a little double clamp. It works okay. There's an upgraded rugged clamp that really does make a big difference on how solid the stem feels. The one thing I do have to tell you is these 3 scooters, if you were blindfolded, which should be hard to do in ride, you wouldn't know they're the same scooter. They handle that much differently. And a lot of that's just because of how tight it is set up in here and how tight what the stock suspension might be coming out with. I don't think there's necessarily a standard for what tension that's at. So as you'll see in a subsequent video, that to me, that's something is paramount to adjust when you get one of these scooters. The thing we'll look at here is the handlebars of the 52 and then the 60. They both have the same QS S4 display. I'm kind of dubbing that the incredible disappearing display because it kind of disappears in sunlight. The generic brake levers there on the lower 5218 version, and the zoom brake levers, which is the same on the other 2 scooters. All right, hopefully this look at each of these 3 options you have on the Zero 10X and the myriad of scooters out there that share the same platform, hopefully this is helpful. If you've made a decision and you have some feedback, please put it down in the description. No, you can't do that. Put it in the comments. There'll be some stuff in the description to help you out. Some of this information will be down there as well. You can contact me through my website, and you can check me out on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff if you'd like. I'm going to bring you a couple more videos on the 10Xs on a couple things I think you need to do on them to get them really set up for you out of the box, to really get the best experience out of them. And I'll see you on that one, and a whole bunch of videos coming to you soon. Thanks.
Catch the wave.